Hello there, and welcome to today's edition of the Only Endometriosis podcast you need. Today, I'm going to be talking about exercise. This is something that comes up all the time. So 90% of my clients, at some point during the sessions that we're working through, we will start talking about exercise. And you know, if you've followed me for a while, if you've been a client, you'll know that I don't necessarily like talking about exercise. I like to reframe exercise as movement, but I can talk about movement as much as I like. I'm not going to get asked about movement. Nobody has ever asked me, oh, how can I move more in my day, or what sort of movement can I be doing? The question is always around exercise. How can I exercise when I really don't feel like exercising? And there's a few different things going on here, and it's a relatively quick podcast today. I'm not going to keep you for like the hour that I did last week, but I'm going to touch on a few things to consider if you're thinking about either getting back into exercise or if you're looking to find exercises that are going to serve you well. The first thing I need to say is obviously I'm not a qualified personal trainer. So this advice that I'm going to give to you today in this podcast is very much from my own journey, but it's also from the journey of my clients and other women who I speak to, who I connect with on a regular basis. If you are looking, especially if you're looking to get into exercise for the first time, but if you're looking for proper qualified advice that suits you as an individual, then I would definitely recommend going to see a qualified personal trainer. If you can find one with experience in whatever it is you're struggling with as well. So if you have endometriosis, if you're on your menopause transition, if you can find a PT who has experience in working with clients or successfully working with clients, that's even better. But definitely find a qualified PT and maybe speak to your doctor as well if you do have an underlying health condition. So that's the disclaimer out of the way. Let's get on with the advice from my own journey and from the journey of my clients. So yeah, like I say, a lot of people will have heard me talking about exercise and trying to reframe exercise as movement. Exercise strikes fear into the mind of a lot of women, and that's why I like to talk about movement, because when we talk about movement is a way more gentle way of looking at exercise, and exercise doesn't have to be, well, exercise has to be movement. Well, actually it doesn't. I'll come to that in a second. But movement generally has to be exercise. So the two go hand in hand. But psychologically speaking, the term movement is a lot easier to get your head around. It's a lot easier to welcome into your life than the phrase exercise. However, I can reframe it as often as I like. I can talk about movement till the cows come home, but I never get asked that question. I never get asked the question, oh, Sarah, how can I invite more movement into my life? It's always about, how do I exercise efficiently? I want to exercise. I know I need to exercise, but this isn't helping. I can't do this. I haven't got the energy to do this. So what are the alternatives? So again, this is not going to be specific advice to you as an individual. This is general advice that I would give everybody, but tailor it please to your own needs and goals. So the first thing, it won't surprise you, is to connect to your own body and your own needs. So a lot of women that I work with say, I used to do a load of exercise when I was younger, and I put myself in this category as well. I used to do again, not necessarily me, but the phrase is always like, oh, I used to run marathons. I've never run a marathon in my life, but I used to run marathons, but my body just can't cope anymore. I used to go to the gym 5 times a week, do high intensity, hour explosive kickboxing or CrossFit, and I just haven't got the energy anymore. Or I used to do X, Y, and Z, and I used to really be able to maintain my weight, but the weight doesn't seem to be shifting, and I just can't do what I used to do anymore. It's just not working for me. One thing I'd say is when we talk about exercise and when we talk about knowing our bodies, it's not just our physical body that we need to consider. So we talk about body, I mean body, mind, and soul. So the first thing to do is to find exercises that serve all 3 of those areas. So if somebody said, I had a lovely client that came to me the other week saying, look, I know I need to do yoga. I'm really struggling with my endometriosis and I know that yoga will help. But I get bored, I don't like it, and it flares my symptoms. Okay, why do you feel the need to do yoga? Somebody's told you that yoga helps them, they've got endometriosis. That's fine, that's absolutely brilliant. Tell them to crack on. But A, if it doesn't light your soul, if it doesn't lift your spirits, if it doesn't make you feel good, then I would recommend looking for something else. B, if it makes your symptoms flare, definitely look for something else. Endometriosis exercise needs to serve us. It needs to serve us on all three of those levels. And especially if you're struggling with something that's giving you symptoms. So endometriosis, for example, can be massively debilitating. The symptoms that we get, and it's not just polycystic ovaries, fibroids, even just difficult periods, even menstrual cycles in general, can bring with them symptoms. Menopause transition can bring with it symptoms. So if you're struggling with, let's say, abdominal pain, and you're doing an exercise that you know the next morning you're going to be in absolute agony, and maybe for a few days afterwards it's really going to flare that symptom, but you still believe that you should be doing it, I would invite you just to question that belief. I would invite you to look for something else that makes you feel good, mind, body and soul, something that you look forward to doing, something that you enjoy doing. Another cracking example, I have one client who's also become a friend who spends, I've known her for years, and actually, well, she was a friend before she was a client, to be fair, but she spends an hour just walking on the treadmill in the gym. Most days a week, not every day a week, but most days a week she'll go to the gym and she'll just spend an hour. She plugs her headphones in, she watches the TV, and she just walks on the treadmill for an hour. For her, that is perfect. She's switching off. She does it at the end of the day on her way home from work. She's able to switch off from all of the rubbish that's been going on around her. She's just in the moment in the gym. For other people, that's their idea of an absolute nightmare, and they'd rather be outside. They'd rather be outside for 10 minutes. That's going to serve them better than being in the gym for an hour. Exercise is very, very particular for you, and those needs change as we get older, as our symptoms change. Those needs and those desires and those wants change as well. So know your body, mind, brackets, mind and soul, and understand what makes your body, mind and soul tick, what makes all of that sing, what makes you feel good, because that's ultimately what we're aiming for. This shouldn't be a chore. This shouldn't be something that we really don't enjoy doing. Excuse me. And us as women as well, our needs, our wants, our goals change depending on time of the month as well. I shouldn't say time of the month, time of the cycle. Even if you don't bleed, you still have these hormones. Some of them might be chemically enhanced or chemically reduced, but we still have these hormones in our bodies, and that can massively shift how we view exercise. It can shift our energy levels. It can shift what we are prepared to do. Back in our younger years, we may have loved getting hot and sweaty in a hot yoga class, or, like I say, an hour of kickboxing at the gym. But actually, nowadays, we'd prefer something a little bit less, I don't know what the word is. If you're struggling with hot flushes, maybe the last thing you want to do is put yourself in an environment where you're getting even hotter. It's a personal choice. For some women, it might be the opposite. Never exercised at all before in my life. Now I've suddenly found CrossFit, and it's transformed my life. It's entirely personal to you. And like I say, at different points of your cycle, you may feel completely differently. You've heard me talk, I'm sure, about how we can tailor our working lives to fit our hormones. So we do lots more networking, lots more contact with customers, lots more workshops, whatever it is you do in your business. Do lots of those while you're feeling at your effervescent best. So around ovulation, that's when you harness that energy of vibrancy. Menstruation, that's when we're more kind of reserved and let's have a duvet day. Embrace that cycle with your exercise as well. So embrace the high intensity, or the higher intensity, the more social aspect of exercising when you're feeling that ovulation, effervescence, vibrancy, that beautiful, well, not always, but that beautiful energy that comes with ovulation. Embrace that. If that's how ovulation shows up for you, again, it's a general statement, doesn't apply to everybody. Know your cycle and tailor your exercise regime to that. And there's nothing wrong with viewing exercise completely differently. So one of the things I would say is, I always talk, like I said, I always talk about movement rather than exercise. And if we can start to reframe that when we're building into everything else as well, then suddenly exercising becomes a lot easier. So if there's a week of your cycle where you feel like you can go for a run, I'm not necessarily saying that you go for a 5k run every morning, but embrace that energy and get out there and do a run more at that time of your cycle. Then if you're feeling like you haven't got any energy, like you just want to be by yourself, then find YouTube channels or You can get those apps. I think there's one called Lazy Fit, something like that looks really good. I haven't tried it. If you have, please let me know. But it looks really good, where it's like 10 minutes of gentle stretches just to get your body moving, just to get that energy flowing. It doesn't have to be high intensity flow. We just want to make sure that our energy and our blood and the water is moving through our systems. Stand at your desk. So I'm recording this podcast stood up. I normally do. Sometimes I'm sitting down. Depends on my energy levels, depending on how effervescent I'm feeling. But today I'm recording this podcast and I'm gently shifting backwards and forwards. So actually side to side. I didn't need to say that because you'd never have known. But I'm just shifting my weight side to side. So I'm gently swaying. It's helping me with my creative flow, because as my energy's flowing, as the blood's flowing, so are my creative thoughts. So it's helping me produce the words, although you wouldn't think it sometimes, produce the words that are going to come out of my mouth to record the podcast, but it's also keeping my bodily flow going as well. Simple things like that. It doesn't have to be huge, massive exercise all of the time. The other thing, now this is slightly more controversial, or maybe slightly a bigger stretch for some people, is to reframe a whole host of other things like exercise. So if we take that concept of our being as the thing that needs exercising, not exorcising, that's something entirely different, apologies. But if you think about your body as the body, mind and soul, and if you think about your pledge, you want to exercise. If you can pledge to yourself to do 30 minutes of exercise a day, that can seem quite daunting when you think of exercise as that explosive, high intensity exercise with a capital E. But actually, if we frame exercise to movement, if we reframe exercise to exercising our mind and our soul, we can then also start to incorporate other things. So we can start to incorporate things like puzzle books, like reading, to exercise our minds. We can start to think about meditation. We can start to think about journaling. And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes of a solid block either. So if you're in that mindset where you just don't have the energy, or you just don't want to do that high intensity 30-minute walk or run or gym session, do 10 minutes sit-ups, do 10 minutes star jumps, do 10 minutes gentle yoga, whatever it is you're drawn to do, and then do 10 minutes meditation, 10 minutes breath work, and then do 10 minutes journaling. And you can even space those out in the day. So suddenly that 30 minutes of exercise becomes a lot less daunting. And actually, when you start to break down the barriers, doing the half an hour high intensity stuff becomes a lot more enticing, because you've already got past that psychological block of doing half an hour of exercise a day, which for some reason we all struggle with at some point. It feels like, if you're not in that routine, it feels like it's a really intense habit to get into. But there's ways of reframing it, there's ways of tackling it that make it become so much more accessible. And again, I just want to talk a little bit about reframing things and being gentle with yourself. You know that I'm a massive advocate, and I've talked here about finding things that serve your soul and your mind just as much as they serve your body. And that is really, really crucial. So if you're struggling with severe symptoms, even just massaging, that kind of thing, even if doing a tummy massage, for those of you who know how to do self-care on your tummy, even just connecting to your tummy, connecting to your womb, doing that breath work, even that kind of thing can be, like I say, reframed as exercise. So if you just want to do that for 10, 15 minutes, include that in your 30 minutes pledge to do exercise a day. But quite often we are struggling with something that's a lot deeper than just our symptoms. If you are, I don't know what the word is, I'm going to say unrecovered or unhealed or less than 100% healed. If you have experienced, that's probably the best way of putting it. If you have experienced trauma in the past and there's still an element of that trauma with you, which there potentially always will be, it's an incredibly difficult thing to completely overcome, then we seem to be even more reticent to start to exercise. Now, there's tons of really valid reasons and understanding behind this, and I'm not going to go into all of that, the kind of the trauma-inforced research, but if you are struggling with the effects of trauma, then exercising, especially if you're setting that goal of 30 minutes exercise, it can be really, really triggering. So when I talk about being gentle, it's really, really important if you are struggling with that idea of 30 minutes, even to break it down as I've suggested. It's really, really difficult. So when you are tuning into yourself and your own needs, completely validate everything you're feeling. So forget about the word should. I know I should be doing yoga. Why do you know you should be doing yoga? If yoga isn't serving you, if it's flaring your symptoms, if you're not enjoying it, then you shouldn't be doing yoga. So acknowledge your pain, your emotional pain, acknowledge the fear, the anxiety, whatever it is that you're feeling about this I should be doing this. Why, what's going on for you that means you should? Just be really, really gentle with yourself. You may have a longing to do kind of the 30 minutes high intensity, and that's absolutely fine. When you're struggling with unhealed trauma, you can often feel as if your goals are completely unachievable, completely inaccessible, and that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So by breaking it down into these smaller goals, by breaking it down into saying, okay, well, I know that at this time of the month, I find it easier to run. If that is your ambition to do a 5K in half an hour, whatever it is, it may seem unachievable. But if you break it down into smaller steps, it suddenly becomes a lot more achievable. If you say, okay, 30 minutes of exercise a day is going to get me to my goal, but exercise doesn't have to be exercise in the traditional form. It can be meditating. It can just be healing. Because as we're healing, as we're giving ourselves permission to understand what's going on for us, we're exercising in a different way, but we're actually building ourselves up. It's all part and parcel. If you think about how much professional athletes spend on mindset coaches, on sports psychology, the physical performance and emotional, I'm going to say performance, but I don't necessarily mean performance, but the physical and the emotional are completely intertwined. Even in Western thinking, they are completely intertwined. So if you're struggling with trauma, and trauma doesn't have to be anything major, it can just be the fact that you have experienced so much pain from your symptoms. That's traumatic in itself. If you have experienced pain through exercise, then you will have a link in your mind between exercise and pain. So validate everything that you're feeling. Don't feel I'm telling you what to feel, which I absolutely shouldn't do, but it may feel accessible, and that can lead to frustration. That frustration can lead to, I was going to say chucking our toys out of the pram, and I'm just thinking about myself there, because quite often I've put myself firmly in this camp, by the way. My goal feels completely unachievable at times. And I have been known to think, do you know what? I'm never going to get there, so I may as well just sit and eat this chocolate. You know I love chocolate, but sit and eat this chocolate bar for lunch because I'm not going to get there anyway, so why should I even bother? That sort of reaction is completely understandable and completely human. It is completely okay to feel disappointed in yourself, because that disappointment is a signal that you kind of know that you can, and I'm going to say this isn't helpful, but do better in inverted commas. You know that actually what you want to achieve is achievable. The key thing is to acknowledge that disappointment and not to be hard on yourself with it. Just say, do you know what? Yeah, okay, I've done that. I'm going to do this now. That could be journaling, it could be healing, it could be that you go for a walk afterwards. Just do something again to lift your spirits, to lift your soul, to make your mind, body and soul sing together. You've heard me say before, and I will continue to say, healing isn't linear. So if you have a setback, if you have something that makes you feel disappointed in yourself, that makes you feel as if your goals are completely unachievable, just know that that is a completely valid response. Then move on from that, reframe it, do something that lifts your spirits again. And if you are in this camp as well, begin with low, small pressure actions. So things that aren't going to put too much pressure on yourself. We talk a lot about comfort zone and people saying, oh, you should be doing stuff out of your comfort zone. Actually, if you're within this this cohort of people that I'm talking about, sticking within our comfort zone is actually not a bad place to be. We can push ourselves perfectly easily still within our comfort zone, and it isn't triggering us. If leaving your comfort zone is a trigger, then it's something that should be approached with caution and not entirely often. But for example, if you do want to do that half-hour run, but leaving the house feels completely overwhelming, again, perfectly valid. So start to think about little things you can do at home. Like I say, it doesn't have to be the full 30 minutes in one go. Just doing the sit-ups or the star jumps or the wall sits to build up your leg muscles. Anything like that you can start to do simply at home. Rebuild your confidence. A lot of the time we feel as if it's our confidence that's knocked, and a lot of the time it is. It's a confidence in ourselves. It's our confidence around other people. Things that build up our confidence are massively, massively beneficial when it comes to thinking about exercise. A lot of the time when I speak to women, and again, I've been in this camp myself, I don't want to go to the gym because I'm too big, I'm too unfit, I'm too this, that, the other. Like I say, I'm guilty of this as well. And again, that language that I'm using, guilty, it's so difficult to not be hard on ourselves. It's so difficult sometimes to be gentle with ourselves. But building up that self-confidence can knock down so many barriers to exercise as well. So when we talk about exercising, when I talk about journaling, build in mantras about self-confidence. Do meditations that will build up your self-esteem, because again, that will help you get back into whatever it is that the goal, your ultimate exercise is. And again, where, I know it sounds possibly a little bit daft, but wear clothes you're comfortable in. Again, whether this is indoors or outdoors, wear something that you feel good in, essentially. Wear something that either, if you want to wear tight-fitting clothes, wear tight-fitting clothes. If that idea terrifies you, then wear loose-fitting clothes. Go into a private room. So again, some gyms have yoga studios that you can just go in and do 10 minutes by yourself, or pick a room in your house where you feel safe, that you're not going to be seen by outdoors, so you know that next door can't see you. Go outside, do something under a tree where you know next door can't see you. Put on calming music. So even if you're doing high intensity, 10 minutes of high intensity star jumps, don't forget the stuff. I talk a lot about creating safe spaces for yourself and about creating the mood and the atmosphere and getting the energy right. Exactly the same applies when we're doing this. So prepare the space that you're feeling as well. Prepare the space that you're using as well. So put on the music that's going to make you feel good. It's surprising even when you're going for a walk or a run, if it's feeling difficult, it's surprising if you have your favourite tunes on your headphones or on the stereo if you're inside. It's surprising how quick the time goes if you're singing along to something that you're loving, rather than just counting out the star jumps or counting out the crunches or whatever. And again, I talk about connecting to your body. I've talked about connecting to your body, but keep reconnecting. Trust your body. Trust the messages that your body's sending you. So like I say, just because somebody's told you that yoga is really good for you, trust those messages that your own body is sending you. If your body is telling you that yoga flares your symptoms, trust that message rather than the message from whoever it is, some YouTube guru, whoever it is that says you should be doing yoga. Trust what your body's telling you above all else. Build up. If this is an alien concept about tuning into your body, and listen to the messages, then start slowly. You're not necessarily going to get it right all the time, but you can't get it massively wrong. There is not much damage that's going to happen if you're starting slowly and listening to the messages that you're trying to listen to, the messages that your body's telling you. You have to start somewhere. It's exactly the same as learning any language, I suppose. You start somewhere. It's incredibly beautiful. Is that the right word? It's a lovely thing when you can connect to your body and you can understand what your body's telling you, but it's not particularly easy, and I've been doing it for years and I still don't get it right. Sometimes I ignore it, I willfully ignore it. Having the tools to then remedy it is the key there, but that's a whole other podcast. So if you're still feeling anxious, a really good thing to do is to start any exercise. And I am going to use that word. I'm going to stop my aversion to the word exercise. But before you start any exercise, especially if you have struggled with anxiety around it, then start any exercise that you do, mind, body and soul, with a grounding technique. So a mantra, nice bit of breath work, a nice bit of relaxation. Your body responds better when it's hydrated. Your body responds better when it's relaxed. So if you can relax it down, if you can thoroughly hydrate it before you start anything, then your body will respond better, it will repair better, and it will heal better afterwards. So I hope that that has been useful for you. If you are considering getting back into exercise, like I said, with the disclaimer around the PT and the GP, then just be very, very gentle on yourself. And like I say, anything to do with our body, mind and soul is not linear. So you're not going to see, we take progress photos, we weigh ourselves, and that's perfect. That's a really good way of, if your goal is a certain weight or to get into a certain dress size or to run a certain distance, then tracking your progress is absolutely vital, because you can see the steps that you've achieved. You can see the milestones that you've achieved, but do it in a really, really gentle way. So if you're going to weigh yourself once a month, excuse me, around the same time of your cycle every month. Because as we know, same with taking photos, as we know, you can take a photo on day 5 of your period, or your cycle, sorry, you can take a photo when you're having your period on day 5 of your cycle, and you will look completely different to taking a photo 5 days before your menstruation starts. So be consistent when you're taking photos. Don't take them every day, because that is kind of, and again, I'm telling you what to do. I shouldn't. But don't take them every day. Don't weigh yourself every day, because the fluctuations are natural. The true progress is to pick a day, pick a time of your cycle when you're going to be evaluating, revisiting, reconnecting, and do it at the same time every cycle. Then you will see the true changes that you're making. Exactly the same with distance as well. It's slightly harder with distance, because most of the time you will be tracking the distance. If you're running with a smartwatch, or if you're running with your phone, then you will be tracking your distance, or you will run a certain route, so you'll know that you're doing the same distance. But actually, if you're going to sit down and look at your times, if you're going to sit down and look at your heart rate, whatever it is that you're using to measure, do the actual review and reconnect just once a cycle. Be gentle with yourself. Nothing's linear. Progress is progress. Even if you do sit and have a chocolate bar one lunchtime, that's absolutely fine. Enjoy the chocolate bar. Enjoy what it's doing. Do a remedial action if you want to, but you don't feel you have to. It's absolutely fine to eat a chocolate bar for lunch every now and again. So I hope this helps. If you do have any questions, then I'm always happy to hear all your comments. If you have any suggestions, anything you'd like to hear me do a podcast about, then again, that's fine. If you'd like to work with me, do check out my website, halcyonwomenshealth.com, and that goes for businesses as well. If you'd like me to come and speak or train within your organisation, then please do give me a shout. As ever, it's been a privilege to talk to you. Thank you for your time and your energy. Have a lovely week.